The question that we're going to look at this evening, China's New Era, progress or Jeopardy?
Actually, I was going to say I hope I could have the drink now, actually, because the book is really about some warning signs in contemporary China about problems that they face. Who doesn't? But China has its own kind of fair share. There are some quite particular problems that I think the Chinese economy has run into after this extraordinary 3 or 4 decades. More recently, China has been much more vocal, much more assertive, a little bit more truculent. So all of these changes together, I think, give us a perspective or an insight into China which is not the China that we really grew up with. It has changed in some very material respects. Having made the transition from being a poor country to a middle-income country, how does it make the transition from being middle-income to being a rich country? And this is really all about the quality of institutions and about gearing up for a different way of generating productivity. So the trade issue, one, this is not an ordinary trade row like the Americans are having with the Mexicans and the Canadians. This is an existential argument about technology leadership, about military superiority, and about the rules and regulations of industrial policy. This trade spat is going to go on for the foreseeable future. And the Belt and Road, finally, really is an ongoing debate, really, for which there is no conclusion as yet, which is it a Eurasian development project that's setting up a new development model for the world, or is it something that's very China-centric in terms of who benefits?
China's economic transformation, especially since 1978, is most extraordinary, I think unparalleled in certainly modern economic history, but you can take it back probably a lot further than that. Generally, the Western climate opinion has got China wrong with extraordinary consistency. China is profoundly different from Western society, and the West has been hegemonic for so long that the way in which people try and understand and make sense of China is essentially through a Western paradigm. This is the great problem, and you cannot do this with China. And here we face an enormous intellectual challenge in the West to understand China, because we constantly try and measure China against ourselves. We try and make China be like us. We expect China to do what we've done. There's a very loose, and George is partly guilty of this, of saying, well, China's assertiveness, it's throwing its weight around, it's being adversarial. Now, excuse me, compare China's behavior since that process started in 1978 with the equivalent periods in American history, in British history, in German history, in Japanese history. All of them fought lots of wars. China has not basically fought a single war apart from small border conflicts. So we should recognize that China actually has been extremely responsible about its rise and the nature of that rise, and I don't think that's about to change.
If I can draw a line from Theresa May, and she was talking about strong and stable government and about British government, and I think she hasn't had it, but Xi Jinping really has it all for the moment so far. So that's the scenario where we are now: authority, liberty, and the wealth. So these are the 3 elements. Apparently, any political system have to answer that question to its own people. But in China's case nowadays, is that sense of course, we have authority, and of course, we have that certain level of wealth and prosperity creation. But then when they come to the question on liberty, and that would be really a big question for Xi Jinping, what he wants to do on the libertarian side of the thing. So perhaps you may disagree with me, but I'm just simply saying these are the 3 elements of any political system for any political leaders have to answer at the end of the day, irrespective of what kind of political system you have. But at the end of the day, it's really the accountability to his own people that matters, and whether Xi Jinping and his regime will succeed or not, and that is his task in his 2nd and 3rd term. And I know maybe you two disagree with me on many points, but I just open up the debate in here. As for the picture on China, it cannot really be black or white. it's a blurred picture. And I think we really require a nuanced reading for the return of the Middle Kingdom in here.
I'm just not confident that, I mean, it could be somebody else's China will actually make amends in a very material way. I'm just not confident that Xi Jinping's China is going to be able to do that.
You can think about China back to 1970, late 1970. Whatever China does, or whatever China did, and it really got unnoticed by the rest of the world. But putting nowadays in situation, whatever China does now, it attracts so much attention.
I'd like to have a show of hands. How many of you think that China's new era under Xi Jinping, it represents progress? Show of hands. Okay. How many of you think it represents Jeopardy? Okay. So now you look around, you now have someone to talk to in the drinks next door. Thank you very much, and please join me in thanking this fantastic panel.
Thank you.